And then there's Netta, who wants to talk about life after sugar, which is an extremely practical way of life. And, leading up to this show, you and I had talked about maybe some of my health journey too. And I think this is going to be a fun episode because, again, for our listeners that are in their late 20s, 30s, and 40s, in the thick of the crazy season of life of raising kids, being parents, you're at sports fields, you're at basketball courts, you're at dance recitals, you are constantly on the go, which means that you are grabbing whatever your kids eat, you're grabbing snacks, you're eating maybe not the healthiest foods because you just don't have time to always slow down and cook, which leads to a lot of fatigue. It leads to a lot of anxiety. It leads to a lot of feeling hopelessness. And we don't realize many times that's tied to our nutrition and what we eat. So why don't you help us, understand your brand? From what I know is Life After Sugar. You
Yeah.
host your own podcast. It has been wildly successful. It is very niche specific, where you have guests on talking about their journey of life after sugar. So if you hear part of Netta's story today and you want more, head over to Apple, to any podcast platform, subscribe to her Life After Sugar, and hear the stories of what people have experienced as they've learned to cut what has been such a staple of many of our lives growing up, which is sugar. And so you didn't just probably get to where you are today, nor did I. Why don't you help us understand kind of a little bit of your journey and what led you to this point today?
Okay. All right. Well, your listeners need to know that I'm slightly older than your general public, as it were. So I'm 53 and I have a 15-year-old daughter. And I've been with my husband for getting on for 23 years. And so, yes, and this came about, this whole life after sugar thing came about around my mid-40s. So ever since my early 30s, I'd been having all kinds of health issues, not weight issues, I have to say, not necessarily weight issues. I'm lucky enough to have, the I don't know, I suppose it's genetic or something, to be relatively slim and have been all my life. But I was getting weight creep. I got pregnant later on in life after lots of different medical procedures, and that didn't help with my weight. But it wasn't my main problem. My main problem was my digestion, my headaches, my mental health. And basically, I got to my mid-40s and I felt like crap. Right? No pun intended, but my digestion, I had chronic constipation. I was going to the bathroom once a week, is toxic for your body. I felt awful. And the doctors kept telling me, eat more fiber, but it was actually making everything worse. And at the end of the day, I think the fiber products that they were asking me to eat were full of sugar anyway. But, I never put two and two together ever, that my diet had anything to do with just how bad I felt. It was all about the fiber. I could tell it wasn't helping, but I couldn't find any other alternative. And I have nothing against my doctor. He's lovely, but, it wasn't helping. So eventually I got some advice to cut sugar and flour and sweeteners for 2 weeks, not from my doctor, but from a nutritional therapist. And I just said, no way. Are you crazy?
Right.
Why would I do something like that? What has sugar, flour, and sweeteners? That's in everything. So you're basically asking me to stop eating or what? And plus, I felt so bad that comfort foods were my only comfort. And it was like someone coming along and saying, oh, you feel bad? Here, let me cut all the sources of comfort in your life. So I resisted and I said, no, I'm not going to do that. Give me a proper solution. And in the end, you know what happened? I didn't change anything and nothing changed.
Right.
And so after a while, I got over myself, which I highly recommend people to think about doing. I got over myself. And I said to myself, look, things aren't getting better. I've never tried this. I can do anything for 2 weeks, surely. I've traveled around the world. I've changed countries. I've held down a good teaching career for getting on for 30 years. Surely I can give this a try for 2 weeks. And then my other bit of my brain said, no, 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 no. But I did it anyway. And that's the other piece of advice I would have for people. Do it anyway. Even if you don't believe in it, even if you don't think it's going to work, even if you can't see the point, give it a try.
Yeah. Well,
Because
and there's so many people that I come across in my life that they're just not happy with themselves. They're not happy with the decisions that they make, the choices that they make. In many times it stems from those comforts that you talked about. When you are down and out, when you are exhausted, what many of us culturally do, because it makes us feel good in the moment, is we reach for things that aren't together good for us. Whether that is a season of my life where, man, every time I needed a pick me up, I just felt like it's time to go to Starbucks. And you just get in the car and you go to Starbucks and you feel like, okay, I feel better. For some people, it could be, extremes of alcohol. It could be whatever. But if we're not careful, we can have these vices in the form of comfort that can actually be negating the life that's on the other side of breakthrough, which you're trying to discuss. And it doesn't always mean that everyone is carrying extra weight. There may be people that just have really bad habitual habits of overeating too much. And it is this cycle that is so detrimental that, in many of your areas of your life, maybe you've experienced breakthrough in parenthood, or maybe you've done other things. But when it comes to this one area of your life, you're almost addicted to food. It's almost like you have to have it or you don't, and you can't stop yourself. And I know this may sound extreme, but I have to imagine that there's a listener out there that's nodding their head and being like, how do they know? How do they know that I make really bad decisions when I'm by myself or I'm with my